Welcome to the Toca Backstage Podcast. Join Toca's Executive Director Chris Wolf in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Hi, this is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. This is a special edition of Toca Backstage, as I am, like many people, hiding at home, trying to stay well, and a lot of our shows have been postponed, so we don't have any shows coming up, so there's no performers to share right now. So I thought I'd put a call out to friends and see if there was anybody out there that may be interesting to talk to and someone I could share on the podcast. And lo and behold, Gabriella Fisher came through with Tommy Chong, part of the infamous duo Cheech and Chong. I have to say it was a great honor, and I thank Gabriella for the connection. He's a fantastic human being, and it was a lovely conversation. Unfortunately, I had a few glitches technically, as I was trying to record a FaceTime call, which I've never done before. But other than that, it was a lovely conversation, a lovely human being. So listen to this and hope you enjoy it. And stay tuned, because I hopefully will have some more interesting conversations coming up in the very near future. So please welcome Mr. Tommy Chong. Sorry about that. So before we were so rudely interrupted, you were saying that back in the day you started out in Canada with Bobby and the Vancouvers, but you had your family owned a nightclub. Is that how you got the feeling of being in the business?
Well, I've been blessed all my life, and learning how to play the guitar at a very early age really helped me. I started off, we lived in the country, and there was a guitar in the house. I learned how to tune it. I learned how to play it, and I started playing backup to a fiddle player, a country singer, a country player, and actually he taught me everything I needed to know about show business, and so I've been blessed all my life. Like when I had a band, we formed the first rhythm and blues band in Canada, in Western Canada. Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks, Dylan's band, they were the East Coast, and during the 50s, the late 50s, and the early 60s, we were the West Coast, and so we had quite a reputation, but it wasn't until we met Bobby Taylor. He's was a phenomenal rhythm and blues singer, and when we got with Bobby, then our luck changed. Everything changed because he was such a good singer, and we sounded so good as a band that Diana Ross and the Supremes, they were in town. They came and caught our act, and then she phoned Barry Gordy, and next thing you know, we're flying to Detroit to cut a record.
Wow.
And everything. I've been blessed all my life. That's all I can say.
So I'm curious. I mean, it seemed like your career was heading in a trajectory for music. How did comedy enter into it?
I got fired from Motown for trying to get a green card. See, back in the day, the people in Motown, even though they're across the river from Canada, they had no idea the problems between, working in as a Canadian working in the United States, and so I had to get a green card, and I had to miss a job, and so the road manager, he had no idea what a green card was, so he just fired me, and so when I got fired. Well, a couple of days later, Barry Gordy called me up and said, "Oh, you're not fired." But then I realized that I really wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And so I told Barry, I'm going to stay fired because I want to become a Barry Gordy. I don't want to work for one. And he smiled and he says, "Okay," gave me $5,000. And then I started, I was just going to become a songwriter. I wrote that one song. But in my travels, I had seen the Committee, the Second City, all these improv groups, and I got really interested. It was more interesting to me than music. And so then I had to go back to Canada because we had two nightclubs at the time, and one of them was a strip club. And so I had nothing else to do but to just cruise around the clubs and see where I could be, come in, be worth, help out. And so I ended up working the lights in the strip club. And then I realized that the girls were, when they would come to work, they were beautiful in their street clothes. But when they changed into their their work clothes, their stripping outfits, then they weren't so beautiful. So I realized that if I created an improv group with the strippers, it would solve a lot of problems, especially the beauty problems, because they were beautiful, and when they talked, they were even more beautiful. And so I turned the strip club into an improvisational nightclub, and I was just working the lights. But then I was out an MC. I needed an MC, and so the doorman was a good friend of mine, Dave, and so I asked Dave Graham. I says, I needed MC on stage, and he says, well, I'll do it if you do it. And so I stage with Dave, and then we just started doing comedy, and then I met Cheech, and then we got fired, and then Cheech and I stayed together, and so the rest is history.
So is that where Dave came from? From Dave's?
Yeah, Dave's not here, and it was an ad lib too, because I was just torturing Cheech. I was keeping him outside, and the longer I kept him outside, no matter what he did, I wouldn't let him inside. And so then I kept saying, "Who is it?" And then finally he came up. It's Dave. That's the only name he could think of. And then when I said Dave's not here, oh man, that was. To me, that's still the funniest Cheech and Chong bit ever.
It is. It lives out to today. I mean, I know friends who I grew up with still use it today. It's like it's a classic.
It is classic, yeah.
So you've done a lot in your career, from music to comedy to writing to producing, acting. Are there any like favorites of yours that you've done?
Not really. Actually, yeah, it's tough, but I am a writer. I like to. I write. It's not that I like to write. It's that I'm good at it and I can do it. And so I think eventually I will just be a writer. I'll be too feeble to get on the road. So I'm just going to start. Well, I've already started. I keep a journal and I write down all my thoughts and everything. So I'm going to eventually just go into the writing thing.
And so part of what the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation does is we, besides doing a presentation of shows, we also try to help encourage and mentor young performers. Do you, as a performer who's had this long history of doing everything under the sun, what words of advice would you pass on to a young performer?
I would tell them, and I don't care what you do on stage, you can't go wrong if you take acting classes. I would suggest to everybody, no matter what you're doing, if you're a singer, whatever it is, even if you're like a scientist or if you're, nothing to do with show business, I would suggest acting classes, because it's a form of therapy that can become a profession if you're good at it, and it doesn't hurt. It does not hurt to find out, to learn how to act, learn how to talk on stage in front of people, to listen to other people, because that's what they teach you in acting school. They teach you to listen. You listen. You get all your clues from what you're hearing, and And so that's my advice. I give that advice to young kids, to anybody, that expresses, I want to become somebody. Then I say go to acting school, and it doesn't matter what acting school, because basically what you're doing is you're bringing your own personality out. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's like going to therapy. Is there such a good thing as a good therapist? I don't know.
And so where in your career did you take acting classes?
Well, actually, I started when I did the improv group. That was my first taste.
Yeah.
Because I'd sat on the sidelines and I watched them do it, and then when we started doing it, with the strippers, with the girls, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. But when I was a kid in the country, when we got together, there was no toy stores. There was no such thing as after school things to do. You're a kid growing up. If you had time on your hands and you had a friend, you made up your own games. And so when I was quite young, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I got involved with a family of girls. There was a lot of young girls, and they would play dolls or house every day, and it became I became part of the acting troupe. And so when I was really young, we would do scenarios that would last a couple of days, if not a week. We'd go home for supper, and then we'd pick up the game the next day. And so I've been acting all my life, basically. I've been learning how to be another character all my life, and it's so much fun.
And I think kids sort of are innately actors, aren't they? Because
Yes.
they grow up playing make believe, and that's kind of what acting is, right?
Yeah, they create their own realities. And the poorer you are, the luckier you are, because then you have to really use your own sensibilities, your own brain to create these things. Oh yeah, I had so much fun. And then I got an app now that I go on every day, and it's like my therapy. And I've been realizing, when I grew up poor, you made your own entertainment. Like I made my own toys. There was no, like I said, there was no toy store, and if there was, the last thing you're going to do is spend money on toys.
Right.
I mean, especially if you got tools around the house, you can make your own. And that's what we did in the country, and I got so much pleasure out of it. I still do it to this day. Like I carved these necklaces.
Oh wow.
I make bongs. I got to be busy. I got that old. There's an old country thing. When you grow up in the country, you're always doing something. Even if you're sitting down, you're peeling potatoes, or you're doing something. You're darning socks. You're doing you're folding clothes. You're cleaning your room. You're always doing. You're never sitting there just staring at a television set in the country. And I'm so thrilled and pleased that I had that upbringing, because to this day I still got the same habits.
I'm curious, going back to Cheech and Chong, it's do you think now that cannabis is legalized, do you think, I mean, back in the day, the whole pot culture was a whole different vibe than it is today.
Yeah.
Do you think Cheech and Chong would have as much significance today with it being legalized? I mean, because growing up, I mean, I was a big fan of, I had all the albums and I listened to it. And that was kind of like the thing. It was kind of like a, almost not underground, but it was kind of, I don't know, that thing you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then now it's like
forbidden fruit.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think it would?
You know what the Japanese call it? They call it stolen lessons. When a Japanese carver or a potter, when he trains an apprentice, you know what they do? They make the apprentice do everything but touch the tools. They won't let him touch the tools. He sweeps the floor. He does everything. He cleans. He paints. He does everything except he's not allowed to touch the tools. And then the master goes away purposely to see whether or not this guy's going to either obey or disobey. And if he disobeys and he touches the tools, then the master knows that this guy's got a future in the crafts, because it's a matter of things that you have to do, and that's what I find, that's what helps me motivate even my own kids, is that if you want to do something, you're going to have to do it so bad that you will break the law to do it, and that's exactly what Cheech and Chong did. What we did, we went into those forbidden areas, and because we were like, I'm mixed, I'm half Chinese. Cheech is all Mexican, but we were minorities in our world. I've grown up all my life under the cloud of racism.
Yeah.
From the very first day I went to school, I got beat up the very first day I walked in there. A young kid, had no idea what was going on. Next thing you know, the bullies all over me, and the teacher sat there and watched it because it was part of the culture. You're a little brown and you get bullied, and but then I had an older brother, so that took care of that. That bully, he did it one time, and that was the end of that. So Cheech and I both grew up in this cloud of racism, but we both knew that, just like, when you're courting a girl, you use your what makes you notorious. You use it as a helping aid, to help you. And so when Cheech and I started our act, we realized that people needed to be taught. People don't become racist because that's what they wanted to be. It's just ignorance.
Right.
And so what Cheech and I did with our comedy and everything else, and it's still going on now, we taught the world that it was okay to be brown. It was okay to be Mexican. It's okay to be Chinese. It's okay to be black. It's okay to be who you are, and without any kind of apology. You just, this is who I am. This is what you can be, and that's what we gave to everybody. Like I never had any extensive schooling. In fact, I was terrible. I was a terrible student. I dropped out twice, in grade 10. And then I went back because the real world was too tough. And I went back and I got my grade 11. But the minute I smoked a joint and figured out I was going to be a blues musician, then boom, that was the end of school. So it's not about you have to be like with me. You take what you got. And I was lucky. I had a mother that was so beautiful, and she was so. And by the way, the big secret in our family, my mother was quarter Native.
Really?
25% Native. She was born on a reservation. I'm 8% Native. And that was the big secret. Even though she married a Chinese guy, and she got ostracized from her family for doing it. It was more embarrassing to be a Native than it was to be married to a Chinese guy.
Wow.
And so I found that out. But my mother was so gorgeous, so wonderful, so sweet, and she gave me all the everything I needed. Just a simple word. She told me when I was young. She said, "You're different. You're always going to be noticed." And so it's up to you how you want people to think of you. If you want people to think, nice things of you, then you got to be nice. That's all. That's what she told me, It worked to this day.
Well, and I think that's beautiful words for anybody. It's like that old thing about teachers. It's like they won't always remember what you taught them, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to say, you know, growing up, Cheech and Chong they made me laugh, you know, and all my friends. And I think even to this day, I noticed on television just yesterday, I saw Up in Smoke was on television.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a staple for everybody. I mean, I just talked to an interviewer that seen his favorite movie was Far Out Man, a movie that I did. And he said, I must have seen it 1,000 times. You know, I love that effect that we have on people, because it's just what we're doing. What Cheech and I did, we just spread the joy that we were having. We just included everybody in on it. You know, we just said, hey, come and join us. You know, hang with us for a while. We'll have fun. You know, and that's all we did. And that's, to this day, that's still what we do. You know, we just have fun.
Well, I so appreciate you taking the time and sharing your bits of wisdom, and more importantly, I thank you for all the joy you've brought people through your movies, your television, your work. It's inspiring. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You take care. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, man.